We have 2 Terminator films, and 4 attempts to make Terminator 3. But while those later sequels are not great, taken together the franchise presents us with a masterful look at historical determinism, both in terms of the deterministic power of external conditions and the power of narratives. Because every war, every ideology, every technological path chosen is at its core a story that we've become invested in. These films give us several different John Connors. Consider that it's not just a question of casting, but rather that these are not the same person. Each iteration, each John is a different guy, but raised with the same mythos, put on the same path with the same expectations. Different people molded to be the same character in a narrative, which is way more interesting than a time loop. Let's consider the first John Connor, raised like any other median-income American kid. As a young man, he has his whole life ahead of him, and then some overpriced, over-engineered Defense Network computer has a Descartes moment one fine August morning. Everyone panics, and multiple sunrises put an end to that world. Through a web of chance and temperament, John leads a handful of people in an uprising against their new robot overlords, inspiring others to fight until a critical mass of enraged humanity destroys Skynet. John wasn't the chosen one. He had no foreknowledge of those events. He was just a guy reacting, and some people followed him. We have no idea who his dad is. It doesn't matter. Enter the time-traveling murder mech. Skynet, like any scared and dying sapient being, grasps at straws to stay alive. Only in this case, one of those straws involves time displacement. They figure out the plan, John sends Kyle Reese back to protect Sarah, and a whole new world line branches off. Why Kyle? Maybe he had the right mix of skills. Maybe he liked reading about the pre-Skynet world, giving him knowledge that would help him in the mission. Maybe he just pissed someone off, and this was a good way to shove him aside in the new post-Skynet political maneuvering. Kyle Reese arrives in 1984 Los Angeles on a mission to protect Sarah Connor, future mother of John Connor, savior of humanity. Yes, the savior's initials are JC. Of course, Kyle has to explain all of this to Sarah at some point, giving her a framework to understand why a killer robot is chasing her around. Mayhem ensues. They learn that the old slogan, "Make love, not war," is too limiting in a world where we can do both, and the Terminator gets smashed in a hydraulic press set up strangely low to the floor. 9 months later, Sarah gives birth to a son, whom she names John because causality loop. Or she already had a story to explain what had happened to her, and her child had a 50-50 chance of conforming to and seemingly confirming that story. Sarah raises John according to the story she has, according to how she interprets the world.
She'd shack up with anybody she can learn from so she could teach me how to be this
great military leader.
Her experiences have transformed her from an overworked waitress to a warrior. Her entire worldview is defined by the story of her son as the savior of mankind, and she raises him to fulfill that. But being an anti-technology militant doesn't get you far in our society, and Sarah gets locked up in the loony bin while John is placed in foster care.
Nobody believed her. Not even me.
The arrival of another Terminator locks him back to that narrative, seemingly confirming everything his mother had told him and thereby suggesting that everything he was told about his own future is therefore also true. More mayhem ensues, and they destroy everything that they believe would have led to the creation of Skynet. In one ending, we meet Sarah in 2029. The war has been averted, and happy people go about their business, oblivious to the horror they've dodged. But in the theatrical release, a much more ambiguous ending was used. One looking forward with hope, but uncertainty.
The unknown future rolls toward us. I face it for the first time with a sense of hope.
Then things get hinky. In 2003, another Terminator movie was released. Judgment Day, Skynet's attack on humanity, had been established as happening in 1997. The timing had to be adjusted, and this John Connor was raised to fight a war that never happened.
It hasn't happened. No bombs fell. Computers didn't take control. We stopped Judgment Day.
But it's not just about motivating narratives. There's another layer of determinism at work here.
Judgment Day is inevitable.
Sometimes a confluence of social, economic, and technological trends intersect to make certain outcomes highly probable.
Even without a rogue AI taking over, I calculate a 74% chance that human civilization will collapse into barbarism.
Columbus discovering America in 1492 was not inevitable, but a European power discovering the Americas sometime around 1500 was likely, given everything else going on. Same thing here. '09 brought us Terminator Salvation, then in 2015 we got Terminator Genesis, spelled like tech bro marketing bullshit. The story of this movie was dictated largely by Arnold getting old. He's the only one that wasn't recast for obvious reasons. But while the first two attempts at making Terminator 3 struggled with the story, Genesis directly engages with the source material and accepts the core truth of both storytelling and physics. When time travel is involved, shit gets stupid real fast. So the simple breakdown: after 84 Terminator and 84 Reese arrive, things veer into the T2 timeline. Cyberdyne recovers the Terminator carcass, and in 1992 a second, more advanced Terminator arrives, apparently as a backup. A Model 101 is sent back to protect young John, the same model that was sent back to kill Sarah. Maybe old John thought a familiar face would be a bit of a laugh. These are infiltration units, by the way, designed to blend in with half-starved guerrillas. Imagine if Lance Henriksen had ended up playing the Terminator. Totally different vibe. Anyway, they destroy all physical traces of that future. I always wondered if that steel was used for anything, like if there's a haunted fridge somewhere desperately trying to turn into something else. Similar conditions keep arising, leading to similar outcomes. All of the Terminator films, both the real two and those others, are some iteration of an inevitable war and John race to fight it. Even Dark Fate can't escape the mold by blotting John in the opening scene, the best scene in that movie. And so we have a story rooted in Cold War fears of nuclear war and the mad game of deterrence continually dragged forward into a new time. A sort of perma-present where all the details can change but the underlying forms, relationships, and motivations persist. But what if, after that one night with Kyle Reese, Sarah had a daughter instead of a son? She can't just dismiss the story, not after narrowly escaping a skull-faced killbot, but she can't escape that the narrative, or at least her assumptions about it, haven't been entirely correct. Maybe she shrugs it off, names her Jane, and runs around training her to fight a war, but always with a little bit of nagging doubt. Maybe she figures that John's sister just wasn't important to the story and obsesses over trying to find John's father so the prophecy can be fulfilled and humanity saved from extinction. Or maybe she decides that the future is not set. Her daughter is proof of that, proof that things can go differently. Maybe instead of getting trapped in the war mindset, she instead gets political and sparks widespread debate over handing over the power to deploy weapons to an automated system just as it's becoming technologically feasible. Or better still, maybe she writes a story. A science fiction novel about a woman chased by a machine from the future after a war that nearly wiped out humanity. She ties in real locations, real events, all of it hinting that it's all real with just a little literary wink. And maybe it's so widely read that years later no one can talk about autonomous robots without everyone thinking of the Terminator. How we see the world and how we change it really just comes from the stories we hold to. And while there may be no fate but what we make, the stories we believe in heavily stack the odds. Maybe she gets sued by Harlan Ellison.